talking about race. Race. The term race, used infrequently before the 1500s, was used to identify groups of people with a kinship or group connection. The modern-day use of the term race is a human invention. The world got along without race for the overwhelming majority of its history. The U.S. has never been without it. Race is a human invented shorthand term used to describe and categorize people into various social groups based on characteristics like skin, color, physical features, and genetic heredity. Race, while not a valid biological concept, is a real social construction that gives or denies benefits and privileges. American society developed the notion of race early in its formation to justify its new economic system of capitalism, which depended on the institution of forced labor, especially the enslavement of African peoples. To more accurately understand how race and its counterpart, racism, are woven into the very fabric of American society, we must explore the history of how race, white privilege, and anti-blackness came to be. Invention. The invention of race, the concept of race as we understand it today, evolved alongside the formation of the United States and was deeply connected with the evolution of two other terms, white and slave. The words race, white, and slave were all used by Europeans in the 1500s, and they brought these words with them to North America. However, the words did not have the meanings that they have today. Instead, the needs of the developing American society would transform those words, meanings, into new ideas. The term race, used infrequently before the 1500s, were used to identify groups of people with a kinship or group connection. The modern-day use of the term race, identifying groups of people by physical traits, appearance, or characteristics, is a human invention. During the 17th century, European Enlightenment philosophers based their ideas on the importance of secular reasoning, rationality, and scientific study, as opposed to faith-based religious understandings of the world. Philosophers and naturalists were categorizing the world anew and extending such thinking to the people of the world. These new beliefs, which evolved starting in the late 17th century and flourished through the late 18th century, argued that there were natural laws that govern the world and human beings. Over centuries, the false notion that white people were inherently smarter, more capable, and more human than non-white people became accepted worldwide. This categorization of people became a justification for European colonization and subsequent enslavement of people from Africa. Slavery as a concept has existed for centuries. Enslaved people, slaves were forced to labor for another. We can point to the use of the term slave in the Hebrew Bible, ancient societies such as Greece, Rome, and Egypt, as well as during other eras of time. Within the Mediterranean and European regions, before the 16th century, enslavement was acceptable for persons considered heathens or outside of the Christian-based faiths. In this world, Being a slave was not for life or hereditary, meaning the status of a slave did not automatically transfer from parent to child. In many cultures, slaves were still able to earn small wages, gather with others, marry, and potentially buy their freedom. Similarly, peoples of darker skin, such as people from the African continent, were not automatically enslaved or considered slaves. The word white held a different meaning too and transformed over time. Before the mid-1600s, there is no evidence that the English referred to themselves as being white people. This concept did not occur until 1613, when the English society first encountered and contrasted themselves against the East Indians through their colonial pursuits. Even then, there was not a large body of people who considered themselves white, as we know the term today. From about the 1550s to 1600, white was exclusively used to describe elite English women because of the whiteness of skin, signaled that they were persons of high social class who did not go outside to labor. However, the term white did not refer to elite English men because the idea that men did not leave their homes to work would signal that they were lazy, sick, or unproductive. Initially, the racial identity of white referred only to Anglo-Saxon people and has changed due to time and geography. As the concept of being white evolved, the number of people considered white would grow as people wanted to push back against the increasing numbers of people of color due to emancipation and immigration. Activist Paul Cavell says whiteness is a constantly shifting boundary, separating those who are entitled to have certain privileges from those whose exploitation and vulnerability to violence is justified by their being white. European colonists' use of the word white to refer to people who look like themselves grew to become entangled with the word race and slave in the American colonies in the mid-1660s. These elites created races of savage Indians, subhuman Africans, and white men. The social invention succeeded in uniting the white colonists, dispossession and marginalizing native people, and permanently enslaving most African-descended people for generations. Tragically, American culture from the very beginning developed around the ideas of race and racism. The racial identity of white has evolved throughout history. Initially, it referred only to Anglo-Saxon people. Historically, who belonged to the category of white would expand as people wanted to push back against the increasing numbers of people of color due to emancipation and immigration.